Hi everybody, welcome to The Hard Truth Inside the Football Industry podcast with me, Philip Ideson, and Darragh MacAnthony, chairman and co-owner of English League One side Peterborough United. And this week we're going to try and do something a little bit different. We want to do a deep dive on football finances and the health and state of a typical EFL League One and League Two club. So we're going to go down and drill deep into that a little bit later, but you know, it'd be remiss without talking about the last 7 days. I think 7 days is a long time in football. So talk me through it, Darragh.
I think, last week it was like, and this, I apologize to everyone in advance for the rant that's probably going to follow, particularly those on Team Apocalypse who, don't agree with me and probably just tune in to go, what a prick. But for Team Reality, 8, 9 days ago, we're thinking vaccine, home run, rearview mirror. And then these fucking clowns in charge managed to turn that positive into a negative. And the last 7 days has been dealing with a COVID breach of the club, this new mutation bollocks, which, very ironically comes out at the same time they want to basically kill everyone's Christmas. I will bet you £1,000 by the middle of January that this mutation strain will be not as serious as they first feared, and it was overblown, and now they're shutting fucking countries down. They've really shot themselves in the foot because now France, everyone's shutting off to the UK because of this shite they came out with last week, and this more contagious strain of virus, which for me, I just think they've the hype and inflated this up to frighten everyone indoors and to basically hammer through the new tier 4 strictures. So come Thursday anyway, I get the call that one of our players has a positive test. The issue being the player was around 25 of our players in a small dressing room on Tuesday night.
Mm-hmm.
On Thursday, when he got the positive, he was sat in a meeting room with another 20 players and staff in a closed room at the training ground, as you do for going through video footage and everything else. So I get the phone call. We're then on to the EFL doctors. Then obviously we make a decision, right, get everyone out of there, send them home. And Friday then, multiple people are coming down with symptoms, even though there wasn't a massive amount of positive tests.
Mm-hmm.
Again, you could test on Saturday before the game. And like what happened with Sunderland, they were forced to play the game. And then afterwards, I think another 8, 9 came down. Yeah. So our biggest concern was, it's not necessarily about the players because we know they're all young and healthy and a lot of them are asymptomatic. They don't feel it or whatever else. But it's Christmas coming up and a lot of these players could be around. This was before the tier 4 nonsense. Mm-hmm. Could be around older people and their parents and maybe grandparents because people are human beings. They're going to probably still see some relatives, even though maybe they shouldn't, but they're going to. So our concern was, I never want to miss a football game. And Christmas football for me is sacrilege. It's everything about why I own a football club. And I'm here, I want to watch football and Boxing Day and 3-4 games and quickly. Listen, I love Christmas football. Mm-hmm. So we spoke to the EFL doctor, we gave him the run through, and the advice was, look, you're doing the right thing, you need to shut it down. So I'm speaking to the disco on Thursday, Friday. And obviously then Friday we knew things were going into tier 3. It was the last day to go out with the kids and we got to see a movie. So I took the kids to Wonder Woman. But I was just a beaten dog by the time I got to the cinema, with the news that we were going to have to shut it all down. And there are still people with, symptoms going on. And,
Mm-hmm.
But fair play to the EFL doctors that we spoke to and the advice we took and everything. And it is what it is. And hopefully, in saying that now, none of these people can spend time with their family at Christmas anyway now at the new tiers. But at the time we thought they might. So we thought, okay, this might save lives in case someone's around, a 70-year-old grandmother or an older parent. Some of the players got older parents, Obviously, a few people were like, oh, Peterborough, you should play your youth team. The problem we had was I'd happily play my youth team. 5 of our first team are youth teamers who train with the youth team.
Mm-hmm.
So they've been around it. Then they train with the youth team, and we've had to shut them down as well. And they can't play their FA Cup youth game. So it wasn't even that we could just put out the youth team. It was a case
the whole
of
club shuts down basically.
Yeah. And it's just after, again, we got shut down on crowds last week. We had crowds back for one game. They shut that down. Every little bit of hope and optimism is just fucking crushed. And that was Thursday, Friday. And then obviously Saturday, those clowns in charge with their mutated variant, whatever else, then just destroy Christmas for fucking millions of people. There were people who had travel plans. There were people who, and I know these people who purposely lived in a bubble for 2 weeks leading up to Christmas to spend time with an older relative or an older person. And they're the people you don't want to affect. But if you follow the advice and you did 2.5 weeks in a bubble, you could safely have a nice Christmas with them. And that was taken away by Boris and his fucking cohorts of fucking clowns that he works with in government. And I don't give a fuck if it's Labour or Conservative. I think they're all as useless as each other and they haven't a fucking clue. And then I'm thinking, all those restaurants for Christmas, the hotels for Christmas who were throwing guests out probably was not allowed to stay open. And the only thing that was allowed to stay open was retail and shopping until Saturday night. Tier 4 said no. The only thing you can buy is essential supermarket stuff.
As someone else deems essential.
Yeah, and then I'm told in some supermarkets the toy areas are all zoned off. I mean, what the fuck's this? I said to my two girls, I said to my kids today, it's my wife's birthday. I said to my girls today, I said, can you imagine living in a society where your mom can't see her brother or sister? My wife lives 10 miles from her sister here. She hasn't seen her in 15 months. She lives 40 miles for her brother, who lives in Tier 2 Bristol. And they were meant to come up for her birthday or Boxing Day as well. And none of us, them included, really interact with anyone over the age of 60. So again, like being in a bubble of whatever they want to fucking call it, it was quite safe for my wife to have a cup of tea with her brother and sister that she hasn't seen. But we're in a society where my wife can't see her brother or sister. So I said to my wife, look, tell your brother he's in Bristol in Tier 2. I'll fucking drive her down there. And I said, I'll pay the fucking fine. I don't give a fuck. Government overreach and fucking haul me off for all I care. So I said to her, look, we'll start the car up on Boxing Day and I'll drive you down and you can see your brother. Her mum and dad are buried in Bristol. I said, I'll take you to the grave. You can put some flowers and you can see your brother. Because that was the idea of seeing her dad died last year and her mum died the year before. So, and they're buried in Bristol. So we were going to visit the grave, but we're not allowed to leave our Tier 4 area because we're living in a fucking dictatorship with these fucking morons in charge. And our brother was like, no, I don't want you to get in trouble. And obviously, so we didn't do that. But me personally, I'd be like, fucking hoo-ha. I'd get my Merc out and fucking leave the Range Rover at home and I'd do 100 miles an hour down there. It'd be like a scene of Thelma and Louise with a bloke and a girl instead. So, and to be fair, if it were me and I had loads of extended family and whatever, and I'd done the bubble for two, I'd still, and I'm not encouraging anyone, this is me personally, I'd break the fucking rules. Fuck all these clowns. You're not going to see me seeing my mum and dad. If I spent the last 2.5 weeks staying healthy and away from the virus to see my older parents who maybe I don't have any Christmases left, you're not going to stop me seeing them. I'd fucking do everything I could. I'd pay and hire an SAS crew to go and fucking take them to me if I had to. And it was really funny because I'm on my driveway here, where I live here in Weybridge, and my next door neighbour is a lovely old lady. I hadn't seen her for months, and she's on her driveway. So she's and before everyone starts freaking out, she's like 50 yards away from me. Margaret, her name is. So she comes down to talk to me, and I'm like telling her to back up. Because again, even though people think I'm a COVID lunatic, I'm always so respectful of anyone of an age group. I stay the fuck away from them. So I said, Margaret, how are you, darling? And she's like, well, I'm gutted. Her son basically lives in Woking. And I said, you're going to your son for Christmas Day? And she goes, well, that was the plan, but, I'm not allowed to now. And she's 86. And she said, Darragh, I don't know how many Christmases I've got left. And, if I've only got 4 Christmases left, they're taking this one away from me. And her son had basically done all the bubble stuff and made sure it was safe for his mom to come round. And I said, look, Barbara, I said, I'll drop you Christmas dinner around. You're on your own on Christmas Day. She's 86 and she's on her fucking own on Christmas Day. And then you got people who are getting criticised for crowding all the trains in London and everything. I hate all these idiots on Twitter who want to blame crowds and blame people. Everyone should be allowed to live their life knowing the risks. And I don't want to hear about protect the NHS. And I know there's a lot of NHS fans out there. My wife's one of them. And that's fine. Her sister worked for the NHS. But I've had 10 months now to make sure the NHS has had the infrastructure and support they need in extra hospitals. When is the NHS? What about everyone else in the UK? There's millions of other people who live here, not just the NHS and the people, who are admitted to hospital or the people who work there. I mean, what about everyone else out here who are losing everything? What about people who are committed suicide? What about people's family members who are committed suicide? You watch suicide spikes go way through the roof during Christmas. The NHS, yes, they're heroes, the people who work in the front line. But surely the government, since February, March, have had plans to basically invest in the infrastructure to make sure they're not getting overrun all the time. Because that's all they keep throwing the stick at you with. Shut down your business, lose everything you've got, because the NHS is getting overrun. Well, that doesn't work for some people, I'm sorry. And particularly people who are younger people who are never in any danger from this virus. So, everyone's getting to the stage. I can't believe how peaceful people have been about this. But I would imagine there's going to be a lot of laws broken. And shame on any authority or police who arrest anyone or sanction anyone for breaking the COVID rules over Christmas. Because I think, and another thing, if you're somebody who snitches on people, who've got an extra couple of cars in your driveway over Christmas, there's a special place in hell for you to join those journalists who've written all the articles fucking pressurizing the Prime Minister to do what he's just done. Yeah? And that fucking little area in hell for you lot, well, fuck me, I hope you all burn there. You know what I mean? Because I hate snitches anyway, and snitches should get stitches. So anyone who's like ringing the authorities because there's an extra car in your neighbour's driveway. Get to fuck. That's how I feel about this.
Nobody knows somebody else's personal situation, around stuff like that.
Correct. But shouldn't they be allowed to make a decision for themselves, Phil?
Yeah, I mean, we talked all the time about personal responsibility.
Correct.
You take responsibility for yourself. You make sure that you don't put yourself in any situations that you feel is putting yourself at risk. You shouldn't be told what to do, and I can't see how it's going to be governed anyway.
Listen, the police are going to be out in force. That gobshite in Scotland, she's got like Scottish police on all the borders. Do you know what I mean? So I seriously think some of these idiots in charge are fucking loving this. They are loving it, and there's a special place in hell for them as well. If I read another person saying lockdowns work, basing it off that gobshite in New Zealand who locked up 5 million people on an island, when you're talking about a place like the United Kingdom or a place like America, you can't apply the same logic. It's not the same, and it's not one size fits all, by the way. And all these idiots seem to think it's a one size fits all. The minute they went down this route, where instead of keeping a certain percentage safe till they got a vaccine, they decide everyone's got to follow the same rules. That's where they've lost the fucking plot, because there's no logical sense to it, and all it's going to lead to is even further debt through poverty. And they're probably going to lock kids up from school in January again. I mean, what it's done to people's mental health. I'm one of the strongest people you ever met mentally, but I swear to you, on Friday, like that cinema, I'll probably look like Bobo the Clown sat there with my eyes going left and right while I'm watching Wonder Woman with the kids. Because I'm just sitting there going, what the fuck world are we living in? I need to get out of Globe and find a country that's like still got some sanity left and maybe move there for a year or two. I'm driven to the edge. And then my football club, obviously losing the one thing I had to hang on to, because I would be allowed to go watch the football because it's elite sport, and obviously I own a football club, and now I can't even fucking do that. So my whole Christmas, as much as I love being with my family, my only outdoor trip will be to the fucking supermarket. And have you ever heard of me before? I get claustrophobic in supermarkets and I try and avoid them. And now my wife's got the perfect reason, like, you got to come with me to the supermarket. Only two of us are allowed to go. This is, to live like this. And my family are due to go back on the 1st of Jan to America as they got school. And now I'm getting texts and headlines about, because of the UK and the mutated virus nonsense that they're now frightening every country in the fucking world, my family might get locked out of going home. So it's just like, please wake me up from the twilight zone, because we're living in the fucking twilight zone. Instead of just talking about how many people got vaccinated this week, we're talking about more nonsense and shit. Do you know what I mean? And it's just like, I don't know, it just drives me to the brink. And when I see this, how this affected so many people, and I know people have died, and we all know. The one thing I can't really get into, or the figures, is how many people in the UK, what are the average age? I know they'd be older, but they're seeing that information is not as easy to find here as it say is in the US. But would people in their 80s and 90s, God bless them, who've passed away, want to know that people in their 20s and 30s are killing themselves? Is that what you'd want in your 80s and 90s? And it's not about sacrificing one for the other, but we're getting to the stage where the serious conversation has to happen here, about what this is doing to young families, young people, young kids, younger generations. This is just I don't know what to say to you, Phil. It's catastrophic. And the actions taken by gobshites in charge. Your pal Biden's going to come in with his 100-day mask mandate. Fucking great. 95% of California is wearing fucking masks. Did you see the statistical record California broke the other day? They're the first place in America to hit 55,000 infected cases in a day. California has been one of the strictest places for 10 months in America.
It's spreading, we have family who live in Los Angeles. It's spreading like wildfire in Los Angeles at the moment.
Can one of the scientists at SAGE in the UK, Neil Ferguson and all his fucking pals, and all these idiots who keep advising this is the best course of action, can you please explain to me scientifically how a state like California, which has 25 million people living in it, half the size of the UK, has basically been locked up by that liberal fucking prick of a governor of theirs for 8 to 10 months, where you're not allowed to eat indoors, you're not allowed to go out, you're not allowed to go to church. He locked all the beaches up. Basically, people have been driven indoors for months and months and months and months. How scientifically have they ended up with the highest rate of infection in one fucking day in US history this year?
Right.
How does that work when you are so draconian in your rules already? So if that's happening there, how's the UK? Give me the scientific answer, because you're an intelligent guy, Phil. Tell me the logic here. Now, let's flip it where Florida's been open since June. How can Florida have less rates per 100,000 infections, less deaths per 100,000, whatever else, than all these other places that have locked up? Give me the science behind it, because I keep hearing all the time, follow the scientist, listen to the scientific advice. Well, give me the scientific advice how Florida, that's been open since then. Yeah, the difference between them, California and New York, because I don't get it, pal. I'm lost for words, and the press don't want to write about it. The media don't want to write about it.
Yep. No, and here we are. This weekend we went to Disney yesterday. We'll probably go again on Wednesday or Thursday, and life still continues. Again, being careful.
Correct.
And you're all locked up, and our family in California is all locked up.
Yeah, it's fucking madness. So, for those of you out there who agree with all of this lockup and agree with whatever else, maybe you're used to a life indoors, so you're quite enjoying all of this. But take away the sick, twisted side of you that thinks this is the right thing. Have a look around the world. Have a look and go, what does work like? Yeah, sure, New Zealand locked up, whatever. It's an island. Yeah, cool. They were able to defeat coronavirus until they're not. Australia celebrating it. Then there's a breakout in, I think, Bondi Beach last week, and suddenly they're all freaked out again. The plague, the bubonic plague is still around, by the way. It's not as bad as it was obviously years and years ago, but you can still find forms of it around the world if you do your research online. You ain't getting rid of it. So why can't we just get on with a cohesive plan just to vaccinate people who need it? And I don't want to hear about racial divide and who gets the vaccine first. The only people who should be getting the vaccine right now are the people over 60 who are the most hospitalized and the most in danger of mortality. No one else. They're the people who should get it. Once they're done, you can get on with school teachers, you can get on with the people who are relevant. The rest of us can wait at the back of the queue who are in that 99.9% health bracket. Because if you can get people like my neighbour Margaret vaccinated, there's a lot less of her going into the hospital, the ICUs and the NHS getting filled up. So this doesn't need to be political. It just needs to be, let's get people in that age group vaccinated.
Can I ask you, going back to, you having, as a football club, having to shut down, you talked about being in touch with the EFL doctors and kind of having that conversation. Like, whose call is it to make? Is it the EFL saying?
No, they put it on us. They won't make the call. They put it on us.
How much does something like this cost you as a football club?
Is there a cost? Not really. I think the real cost is form. If you're in a good run of form, we had 2 home games coming up out of 3 or 3 out of 4. We're one of the best home teams in the country. So we could have gone into January up top, a lot higher. We were 3rd. I think we dropped to 5th. We could be 8th, 9th, 10th by the time we get back. So it could cost us a lot, unless we come out of lockdown and, out of this isolation period on fire, it could cost us promotion. So you think I want us not playing? I'm hoping our players are professional enough. They don't look like fucking fat boys by the time they return. I know they've all got programs and workout gear, and if any of them come back overweight, there'll be a 2-week fine. Yeah. So I'm hoping they're professional and hungry enough to want a promotion, that they come back in good shape. But that we're dealing with this, it's just another kick in the balls, Phil. My wife's birthday today. We'd had reservations last week made for lunch. We're going to Harrods as well this week for lunch, do a bit of last minute shopping, which we always do for kids for Christmas. We went out the other day to the cinema. We wore masks outside. You'd be proud of us. Even when we were walking around a shopping precinct in the high street, because it was so busy, my wife was like, everyone put your masks on. There's a lot of older people around here. No, everyone was wearing masks outside, but the vast majority were, and they were trying and doing it. Cinema was a bit more difficult. There was a few people in there, and you take your mask off to eat and drink. But we were doing our bit, as we always do and we always have. And it's just, at some stage, people are going to be like, how long do I keep doing my bit when I keep getting smacked in the ass all the time? You told me shut my business down. You told me open my business and talk about a football club, fix the ground and do this and make it COVID safe and COVID friendly. I did that. You told me I could have fans back. Great, I did that. Fans are back. Now you've taken my fans away after 6 days of having fans back. Okay, I did that. It's just constant all the time, changing the script, changing the goalposts, changing whatever. And it's just financially a killer. It's just hurting all the time. It's non-fucking stop. Now, God bless people who own restaurants. I was saying this to my wife the other day. Well, actually, we do own restaurants because we've got bars and restaurants in the stadium. God bless people who bought loads of food for Christmas to sell.
Right.
God bless hotels who had full houses booked for Christmas and who had to turf out guests on Saturday night. God bless my friend Ian, who I know really well, a Peterborough fan. He was going to see his mum and dad in Scotland after doing the bubble stuff and staying safe and everything else. And now he can't even do that. And he's Scottish and he's not allowed to go home. You know what I mean? Like, God bless anyone who's a certain age who's going to sit indoors now after probably following the rules with family the last 2 weeks so they could spend it together. You've just made a mockery of all of that. You've just crushed all of those people. And yeah, of course, not everyone's going to be responsible and people might have died, but you're not allowing people to make those choices for themselves. If someone decides to be reckless at a certain age and go out and expose themselves to coronavirus, that's on them. Do you know what I mean? And yes, of course, you don't want other people exposing them as well. But no one in a certain age should be putting themselves in a position where they're exposed to coronavirus, right? So you're not helping. The rules don't work. There's no trust in government anymore. There's no trust over here. Everyone's just lost faith. and you got the Labour leader shouting he'd do it better, and Cannes in London he'd do it. It's a load of bollocks. They're all fucking liars. And look, if Alan Swan's listening to this, don't make a big ET special, about our coronavirus issues at the training ground or, whatever else. I don't need heat from all sections on this, and the club doesn't either. Cut us some slack. Last thing I need is to see a load of like inflammatory headlines or whatever else. You know what I mean? It's just, as you can tell, I'm exhausted with it.
Yeah.
So that's my COVID rant for today. Really, really, God bless all the people out there who are going to spend Christmas on their own. Like my neighbour Margaret, who's 86, and I'm gutted for people like that. I'm gutted for young families who, again, had made plans and they're just destroyed. I'm gutted for people who were too busy working and were waiting until the final 5 days of Christmas to go and shop for stuff for their children, who are now fucking in bits, worried about what Santa's going to bring them.
Yeah, how can you tell your kids?
You tell me, Phil. Like I said, I'm telling my daughters, their mom can't see her sister. She can't see her brother. This is fucking madness. This is the twilight zone. I feel like I need to wake up, because this is just like an absolute nightmare. And if my kids can't get back to America now to go to school, that's going to be a bigger fucking nightmare. So, all these worries, and because it's like every day you don't know what to expect or what's happening today or tomorrow, or, because it just changes all the time.
It's a roller coaster, isn't it?
They've given everyone this 5 days of Christmas. They should have just left it. Stop. But I saw all the articles being written by these pen pushers who wrote articles. Oh, we must lock up. We must do this. We must do that. And again, special place in hell for them. And the government bowed to the pressure, and I could go through statistics and data and everything else. We've been through Thanksgiving. This thing wasn't going away till people are vaccinated. You should have just let people get Christmas in and make that choice themselves, as you'd pre-agreed. You locked England up or the UK up for a month with the promise that people would get Christmas. So you locked them up, you fucking lied, you opened up, you gave us fans back, you took it away, you gave people Christmas, you took it away. Go fuck yourself, you fucking frauds, cowards, liars, and you don't deserve anyone's trust.
So on that note, hopefully next week, well, actually, we'll be back in a couple of weeks. We have all this in the rearview mirror behind us.
Yeah.
There's no confidence.
No, there's no confidence. There's no confidence. It's just like, no, the people are lying, Phil. If you keep getting lied to over and over, and it's like, fool me once, you know what they say, fool me twice. I mean, as the saying goes. So, look, forget COVID. Let's get on to the good news.
Yeah.
The good news for you is you've got a football club, like I warned you last week, when you fire your manager, your team will start winning. What's fucking happened? You got 4 points from 2 games.
4 points out of 6, yeah.
You were having your first fucking wank on your own for a long time on Saturday about the way Bradford played.
It was much better. It's frustrating in one respect, but we're not at the point where I want to be frustrated. I want to be happy that we got 3 points. So we sacked Stuart, as we talked about. We brought in a couple of the youth team coaches, played a couple of the kids as well.
Brilliant.
New formation. Kind of went a little bit more pragmatic, but players knew what they were doing and where their positioning was, and it was like night and day. So we'll see. We'll see if that's the start of a trend or if it's a blip. But it was nice, for a change, because, I was doing the math, and in this calendar year, it's only the 7th time we've won since January the 1st. It's been a pretty tough year, and it was the 4th win of the season. And we got Grimsby tomorrow, so we've got another team that's down there that we have a chance.
Was there a part of you suddenly dreaming about the playoffs now? Before you were worried about non-league?
Not me, but it's funny that you see folks on Twitter now saying, "Oh, we're only 12 points off the playoffs," with a game in hand.
I love football fans. Optimism and negativity. I tell you, it's like optimism and pessimism right there.
Yeah. Let's take one step at a time. By the time that this goes out, we might have a new manager.
Who's it going to be?
So the money is on, I have no idea. The money is on Paul Hurst at the moment. Did well at Shrewsbury, did miracles at Shrewsbury. I think he did well for Grimsby, getting them out of the conference. Didn't do so well at Ipswich or at Scunthorpe.
No.
So I think that whoever we go with, it's going to... you think of it from an outsider and think, I'm not really inspired by any of the choices that we've got. But, the reality is you're 3rd, 4th bottom of League 2.
Sure.
The same challenges that existed for the old manager are going to exist for the new one. How attractive of a proposition is it? And we talked about this before, catching a falling sword and all that kind of stuff. So I'm probably not going to be inspired by anybody, but they got to...
Who do you want? Out of everyone that's out there at the moment available, who do you want?
Well, he's not available, but I would have liked Michael Flynn from Newport, which isn't going to happen. Because he has a connection to us.
Mm-hmm.
Out of work, I would have liked. I would have been interested in the Cowleys for sure, but I think they can aim higher. The people that are out there that you want are not going to come to League Two, and they may have a job to prove themselves that the last job was a blip. They're going to go into somewhere that's a more favourable position. You're going to get somebody who's had a couple of failures, who doesn't have a choice at those jobs, who's going to come in and have to turn his career around.
100%.
And I think that's the kind of manager we're going to be. And I don't want to say stuck with, because I don't mean stuck with. It's just the reality of the kind of manager that we're going to be able to attract.
Do you want someone old or young?
Honestly, I'm ambivalent. I mean, I don't necessarily want a journeyman who's been around and stuff, but I'm a big believer that age doesn't really matter. It's mindset. And so, I want somebody with the mindset who's going to think about building foundations for the club. And that starts at the beginning. It starts with the youth structure. It starts with kind of the things that you're doing with Peterborough. It's about going away from this boom and bust. One manager comes in, he brings in his entire team, they get sacked, the entire team goes, you're left with nothing but empty cupboards again, and you're starting again. And that's the cycle. I mean, we've had 7 managers in the last 2.5 years.
Yeah, it's too many.
Not including caretakers.
Yeah, it's too many. I think the next conversation has to be, and again, honesty and transparency with the fans. This is the manager. This is the plan. If it doesn't work, we go non-league. We're sticking to this manager because we're going to put the building blocks in there to rebuild it. You need 3 windows to fix the problem.
Yeah.
When I hired Darren Ferguson, I knew he'd need 3 windows. I'd pretty much, before I hired him, one of those windows was done where I brought in the Trinity, the Mac attack. Mm-hmm. We'd recruited those players already. But I knew he needed 2 more. He needed the following summer and the following January to cement that promotion and go on. So you need 3 good windows if this is what we want to do. And if we go down, as long as we go down fucking fighting, that manager is going to be there next year and going to be rebuilding. That's what you need to be with the fans, and tell the fans to buckle up.
Yeah, we need to have some patience.
You do. I mean, I'm glad for you to change course. I had the horn last night watching Leeds and Man United play.
Mm-hmm.
I spoke to my gaffer today, and I probably made him feel a bit like fucking insecure because I was like, God Almighty, like the old days when we were winning games 5-3 and 6-4, and we always looked like we score 5 goals. I said, it reminded me of us, Gaff. I said, what was that Bielsa doing with Leeds? I swear to you, they could have won that game 10-8 last night. Mm-hmm. That was probably the best football match I've watched in ages. Leeds, it's like he could pick a postman off the road and put him in at right back and turn him into a footballer. I mean, I know some people, they don't like him, but I'm a Bielsa fan. The football he's got Leeds playing, no word of a lie, Phil. If you'd seen the chances, even when they were 6-2 down.
Yeah, I didn't get to see the game yesterday.
They're playing with freedom. They're playing with panache. They must have had another 5 chances, and I'm not talking about like difficult chances, pretty easy chances, some of them. And it's just like I said to the gaffer, fuck me, you got to get down there and watch how they train. So I was like winding them up today. I was locked it out. But I was just like, it really is like, that's how I want to see football play. I want to see football like that. Chances.
So when you go out and that's your mentality, you want to see that kind of football and you get a 6-2 hiding, does that do anything to rein it in a little bit? Or are you, as long as you went out in the right spirit and you showed,
Yeah. I remember when the Gaff came back the second time round and we had a really exciting squad. We got tanked, I think, 3-1 by Brighton. A couple of other teams tanked us. But then I knew we had in us that the following fixture, I think we won 6-0 at Oldham, we won 5-0 at Carlisle. We had it in us where we could be champagne and then we could be a fucking bottle of shampoo. You know what I mean? And it was basically like a good manager can fix that if you're going for promotion. You can iron out the issues. And we were probably famous that season for scoring a shitload and conceding a shitload. But when it came to the final 2, the second leg of the semi-final playoff, the final itself, we had 2 clean sheets and looked defensively strong while still a goal-scoring threat. So we'd figured it out. Yeah. So, and some teams can just play champagne football all the way through to promotion. So I'm just that guy. I want to watch my team on the front foot. I want to watch us have. I've always said, if we get beaten 5-0, but we've had 20 shots on goal, doesn't bother me. Mm-hmm. If we get beaten 1-0 and their goalkeepers fucking had lunch and dinner without even being bothered, that bothers me. So that's just me as a person. Some people are different.
Now, when you're looking at stats, there's been the rise of XG and everyone talking XG. Mm-hmm. Is that something that you follow, or is it, how impactful is that for you?
Not so much in the XG, but I mean, obviously I do my data and stats review. We spoke about it last week. I've given the manager a few stats, and After the MK Dons draw during the week, I gave him a few stats and a few sobering stats and said, geez, Russell Martin, your ex-player, he knows how to keep the football and pass the ball. Again, I like to wind him up, but, and obviously we were kind of ball watchers most of that game. MK Dons just basically passed it around us for 90 minutes. And our goalie didn't have much to do. There were a lot of fur coat and no knickers involved.
Yeah.
But, we stopped wanting to score after going 1-0 up. And that's not who the manager wanted to do. I just think our players, it was a heavy pitch. They had a game on Saturday, it was heavy. I just think they thought, you know what, we'll grind out a 1-0 here. I'd rather the attitude be go and score another one. So there was a lot of statistics from that game that weren't pretty. But I avoided giving them to the manager, at the moment, because obviously we'd had the win the Saturday before. Sometimes you focus on the positive stuff.
Yeah.
Stats and data, they're just a part of the game. I said it the other day, I did like a training course for a load of people who were trying to do their badges to become managers. And they wanted to voice a Zoom call with me. Nathan Thompson asked me to do it with some of his fellow students. And they want to work as directors of football and the technical side. And I said to them, don't get hung up on spending hours on stats. Sometimes the beauty of being on the training ground with the grass, the ball, and teaching people how to finish, how to cross, how to pass, how to play out of a hard press, how to break down a hard press. Those things are more relevant than data, stats, and analytics. Yeah. So sometimes we can get too hung up on that stuff. Just my opinion.
Yeah, it's kind of the balance of the two.
Of course it is. For me, recruitment's about stats, data. Management has a little bit of it. And then the real essence to management for me is improving players. Yeah. I'll always say to my manager halfway through the season, tell me who we've improved since the summer. So I had that chat with him the other day. I said, run through the players who you genuinely think have improved since July, August. And if a manager can go 4, 5, 6, 7 players, you're on the right thing. If a manager's struggling after one, you've got a lot of housekeeping and a lot of work to do. So I think it's really important.
Now, do you then use the data to measure that? So you baseline them at the beginning of the year and you can use those same stats mid-year to see if...
100%. Joe Ward last year had loads of final third entry points, but his statistics for creating goals, being in goal scoring attacks, wasn't as good as it should have been. He's already 3 times higher this year on that. So straight away, the management as coaches have improved Joe Ward. Some of the younger players I would have seen in pre-season games, I've seen already massive improvements in those young players. Again, that's a credit to the coaches and the manager. Do you know what I mean? So Ivan Toney, you would have looked at 2 years ago his statistics, his missed chance conversions, his ratios, percentages, and they were up through the roof over 100% last year. That's not a coincidence. He had a different manager the last 18 months, and I don't want to slate previous managers, but that's credit to Gavin Strachan, who's the assistant coach, to Darren Ferguson, to the way we play. I do little things like that because I like the manager to listen and go, oh, I'm getting a bit of credit here, because I can talk about it. And sometimes they have to remind themselves that put results to the side. If you're improving players individually, collectively, it's a bigger picture. If you're talking to a manager for 20 minutes and you can't find one player, it's like if I said to you, who did Stuart McCall improve in the Bradford team you've watched for the last 5 months? You probably, bar that young player, couldn't name 5.
No, I couldn't name one.
There you go. So you're struggling. So so there you might say Stuart does deserve some criticism, even though you're a big fan, because no matter how bad things are, a good manager and coach will improve players, and more credit would be, and that would be reflection of Bielsa and the way he has Leeds playing, where he's got Luke Ayling, who we were playing against when he was at Yeovil, who's now playing in the Premier League and running 12 miles a game. Do you know what I mean? So again, sometimes look through it and see, you know what, they're bloody good on the training ground.
Just to finish up on the week, Liverpool now 4 points clear, which seemed like they came from nowhere. Man United now 3rd, only 2 points off Liverpool if they win a game in hand. And Spurs are down to 5th. So it's just interesting to see how things are kind of churning at the top, but also great to see some competition this year.
Yeah, and Lampard's back. I gave him credit recently, but all the stuff I criticised him for, they've again dropped the ball, haven't they? The only real threat to Liverpool is Man City. That's the only credible threat, in my opinion. If Liverpool lose another 2 players to long-term injuries, then they've got a real issue. But they've managed to get over the hump. I said to you, when Liverpool got the injuries, they're going to have to score more than the opposition. Well, as it's been found out, they're actually finding strength from within. And they're making it work, and they're ploughing results. The good thing for Liverpool is, if you look at the points they've dropped, they should have beaten Everton. VAR robbed them. They should have beaten Brighton. VAR robbed them again in injury time. They could be actually 10 points clear. And when they've got against the better teams, they've actually got the results. The Leicester result they've won, the Tottenham result they've won. So what they've got is that winning mentality. So they have to be favourites. But for me, Man City are the dark horse, because Man City haven't had strikers. and I think they're 6 points off Liverpool with a game in hand. It'd be 5 points if they win their game in hand. Man United, we know how good their players are. I'm just not sure about their manager. So I've got no doubt they'll be possibly top four. I don't think they can mount a serious title challenge because I think he'll drop the ball. But I think Pep Guardiola, because of his history and his players, if he goes out and spends 50 million on a new striker in January, Houston, we've got a problem. If Liverpool lost Mane and Salah in January, Houston, we're fucked. So let's see how it goes. Credit the Klopp and the Liverpool squad and team. If they win their next 4 or 5 fixtures in a row, the title race is over.
Do you think they're going to be in the market in January?
I think the only thing Liverpool need to do is go out and buy a centre half. They have to. They have to go out. For me, if I were them, I'd go and give Brighton 50 million for Ben White. They have to, or go and get Cody back from Wolves. He's a bit old now for it, probably, but they need to go and get a Premier League centre half, someone who's played in the Premier League, not a foreigner, Premier League, because if you want to bring them in to help win the title from January to May, they need to hit the floor running. So for me, the problem you've got at the moment is Matip's made of glass. That fella breaks down every other game. He's unreliable. Gomez is out. Van Dijk is out. And then you got Fabinho in midfield. They had to play Henderson next to him the other day against, I don't know if it was Spurs he was against. So when you get into that stage and you're trying to rely on a 21-year-old, which is great and they've done really well, go out and buy a centre half. Just a bit of comfort and insurance there. I don't think they need anything else. As long as Jota comes back from his knee injury in January or whatever else, they've got support. And Shaqiri, who's made of glass, they can keep him fit. They've got a chance of they could win the league by, again, 15 points if they go out and invest in the centre half. And I think if they don't, it could be tighter.
All right, we'll keep watching. Well, we're going to go into a quick break, and then we shall be back in a moment. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the pod. We're going to talk football finance, and we're actually going to break this up into a couple of parts because I want to do a little bit of a deep dive on the kind of financial side of running a football club, running an EFL League One, League Two football club. And so as I split this up, today we're going to talk income, expenditure, and profitability. And then next week, or the next pod, which is going to be a couple of weeks' time now, because of the Christmas break, we're going to talk sources of finance. We're going to be talking about, trading off and how do we make investments as football clubs, and valuation as well. So let's talk about income. Is there a typical turnover of a League One club?
Income? Did you say income in the year 2020?
All right, let's scratch 2020.
So you talk about income. So it depends on the league you're in. And I guess when I came into Peterborough United, I had the 4-1 rule. And it was basically like we were striving to hit 4 million in turnover. And the 4-1 rule for me was trying to hit 1 million in season tickets, 1 million in gate receipts, 1 million in commercial revenue, and 1 million in ancillary revenue, whether it be transfer fees, extra food and drink sold, all that kind of stuff that went with it. So that was because I think when I bought Peterborough, the turnover was probably like 2.5 million a year, if that, another million you could add in there is obviously TV. Did I say TV money as well, and the Sky money, which back then was like probably half of what it is now. Yeah. So that was the first bump to get the turnover up. I always looked at it. Now as a club, we're always in that probably 8 to 12 million turnover range in League One, and that's always hyperinflated because the transfer fees of what we do. If you take my record, and again, I always say nobody takes enough notice of that record, the last 11 years, I think we've brought in, if you take 11 years only, on 17 players, it was calculated recently at 51 million in transfer fees. So we average nearly 5 million in transfer fee income, which is pretty good going for a League One club. And again, like I said, not a lot of people write about it. So that always helps with our turnover. So I always used to go into the season saying that our cash flow negative would always be about 2.5 million, meaning me, my partners, whoever would have to find 2.5 million. That's without sales, that's without cup runs, that's without whatever. So in a season, you would hope then if you could get a good FA Cup run together, 500,000 off that brings it down to 2 million. If you're having a promotion run, suddenly your gates that you projected at 5.5, 6,000, suddenly you're 8,000. There's an extra 500,000 in revenue. Now you're down to 1.5 on your cash flow. If you ended up in the playoffs and the TV in Wembley and there's another few hundred grand. Suddenly you're about 1.2. It's not 2.5. All right, now I can sell maybe a player. That's going to clear the decks on the million. That's going to pay 1 million off maybe in money out to me or directors. And it's going to put some money into the club to replenish and buy more players. So if you want to get into specifics on turnover, what would a club like us turn over? You can buy our accounts, and you can probably correct me here. We'd probably take about 1 million a year in season tickets. We'd probably take about between 1.3 and 1.7 in gate receipts, depending on how the season goes.
That's kind of on the day over and above your season.
23 league games, potentially more. We probably take another 1.5 million in commercial revenue with naming rights, shirt deals. That's come on a bundle since I bought the club. We've got some great commercial people. We probably take another. It's now up to about, is it 1.2, probably about 1.5 million in TV money now.
Mm-hmm.
Good League One club, saying the top half will be 5.5 to 6.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
Now throw in added bonuses. Do you know what I mean? If we have a little run in the FA Cup, if we have a little run in the League Cup, if we have a run in the Checker trade, which we did once, now you're getting up to the 6 million mark. So anything over that then is you sell a player. And unfortunately for us, we've obviously bought players. We run at a deficit. We don't hit our crowd numbers. We try and aim low when we set out a budget every year. We don't over hype it. We try and hit it to where worst case here. And then if we have a successful season, it goes up here. So I would like to think, even without selling a player, if we have a really good season, we can get up to 7 million in turnover.
Mm-hmm.
That's for a club like us with 7,000 gates, 7,000. Obviously, a club with twice that gate number or 3 times that gate number, you can add a lot more zeros and millions to the turnover. You're going to get you 10, 15 million turnover. If you put us in the championship, that 7 million turnover becomes more like 13, 14 million because the TV money is a lot larger. The ticket prices go up. Your away crowds that come help your attendance go up by 30, 40%. So you're talking different stratosphere, probably nearly even double the turnover of what you get in League One. But we've always probably comfortably hit, if you took an average over the last 10 years, we've probably always hit, I would say, between 8 to 11 million in turnover because we've sold players for millions.
Because the transfers, right?
The transfer fees, yeah.
Now, as you're budgeting, do you look at budgeting to break even at the end of each year? So let's say you plan for a deficit and you want to clear it, or you might carry that forward to the next year, knowing you've got assets on the books that would, far outweigh multiple years of deficits.
Our finance director will take the lead usually for me. What I'll do always is, like during COVID, it was very difficult. She was doing 5 different budgets based on crowds, no crowds, government, this, that, shutdown, season ending early. It was impossible. In a normal given year, by May, when we know pretty much where we're going to be, we start drawing up Plan A and Plan B. So it's a budget for the year. Plan A is championship. Plan B is if we're in League One. And I'll say to her, look, I want you to budget. We're going to have these players. I'll even put in the targets we have, the wages we're going to pay them.
Yep.
And we have an area here of players that we need to get out. She keeps them in the budget, but with a little red line that if they come out, it comes down to this.
Mm-hmm.
So usually she would, by the time she calculates everything and we estimate, say, finishing top 10 in League One, this crowd, she'll have a cup run where we get knocked out in the second round of the FA Cups. There's very little cup income in there, but usually she would have more or less in there anywhere from 2 to 3 million in negative cash flow that we're going to lose.
Mm-hmm.
So I always know what I need to do in my mind for a season coming up, what we need to sell. Now, when we did the COVID one, it was horrendous. Before we sold Ivan Toney, our losses were projected to be in the £5 to £6 million mark.
Right.
So it was almost double a normal year. And that was because crowds, our sponsors weren't paying the same amounts. Obviously, season ticket revenue. There was so much we had to put in, testing costs, losses from before. It was just a ball ache, and it was a big, big amount. So thankfully, the Ivan Toney helped and still allowed us to potentially go out and recruit. But like I said the other day, I did a podcast on BBC 5 Live. I was cheating on you. They asked me to do a little pilot podcast with them. So I said on there, we were talking about buying players. When we buy players, I always hedge our bets. We buy them over time. So Johnson Clark Harris, he would be in 30% of his fee would be in this year's cash flow. 30% next year, 30% the year after. Hopefully by year 3, we've sold them for millions, so we never quite pay the full amount. So we always spread that. And then obviously if we sell a player, if that's over 4 years, we factor to bring it into this year's budget. So that's where we try and always balance the books. It's really, really difficult, but it's something I enjoy actually doing.
Yeah. As you're factoring, so that's essentially selling the full amount that you're due to get in for a discount, but to get the cash today.
Correct.
Are you able to share kind of what impact that has on the cash you get in, or are you?
So usually,
are you losing 10%? Are you losing 5%? What does that look like?
Usually between 8 to 10%. So if we're getting let's say as an example, we're taking a £5 million fee, and we're getting only 2 million of that now. That means there's 3 million that's out there next year, the year after, but we need it brought forward this year. So I will sacrifice 300 grand to get 3 million in.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So that's how we live, instead of like putting it over years and years and years. So there are companies out there that do it. It can be between 8 to 12%. We have a relationship with one company we've used, so we've always got a better rate each time, and the fees and whatever else. So for me, I don't know why more people don't do it. And it just means that we've got our budget in place for this year, and it's what we do and whatever else. So, but look, a big part of what we do is selling players. And if we don't sell a player, it's me and my partners who have to come up with the money. My partners have been brilliant with that. You know what I mean? Whether, if there's been a shortfall, you know what I mean, they've taken a hit on that, but it's been made up then when we sell a player. And
Yeah.
so I said the other day, the dream scenario would be within the next 2-3 years is basically everyone who's put money into the club is paid back plus interest,
Hmm.
and there is no debt. There's no external debt to any investor, any partner, any creditor, and to me, to my partners, to whoever. Where you want to be at a place, you're at a base where you're self-sufficient. You've got that great academy. You've got your young gems. You've got your assets. We're in the top 12 of the championship. That's the dream. And I know fans will go, well, we don't want owners getting money out of the club. We don't take money out of the club. We only take, when we can, if we can, money that we've put into the club. So that's just the way the real world works. None of us are billionaires or sheikhs.
If you have the cash flow to be able to support that from
Correct.
from your own resources perspective, you and your partners, it's very difficult for the clubs to get, and we'll talk about sources of financing in the next one, but it's hard for the clubs to get hold of that kind of cash.
I'll give you an example. I had a situation a good few years ago, and cash flow for me can be up and down. And I had a situation where the club needed 2 million, and I took it out of my wife's house.
Mhm.
My wife had a house, here that she bought, many years ago. So I basically found a factoring company that gave us 2 million against the house. I had to pay 200 grand in interest,
Mhm.
and I put it into the club. And then a couple of years later, the club paid it back.
Mhm.
The money was maturing, and it had to be paid back. Otherwise, the house would have to be sold. So basically, the club, when we sold a player for big bucks, paid it back, and happy days. They didn't pay back the interest. I paid the interest. The interest was like 200 grand or whatever else, but the house was fine. And to be fair to my wife, she was as good as gold. She understood how it worked. At the time, I had investments in markets. I didn't want to cash them in. The easiest way was to go and get equity out of an asset. I helped the club for 12 months. I knew I'd get it back. It actually took 24 months to get paid back, but I was okay with that. And we sold a player. So sometimes that's the way it works. Look, I helped the club out, and then the club helped out, in return to pay it back.
And you're in that fortunate situation, and I say fortunate, it's a planned situation where you have the talent that you can sell to cash in to be able to bring money into the club, whereas an awful lot of League One and League Two clubs don't have that talent that if they need to, they can cash it out. Like, they don't have those assets to sell.
Yes, you look at, say, as an example, me taking 2 million out of my wife's home to put into the club. Out of that 2 million, probably about 300 grand of the 2 million went to buying players. So 1.7 went in, 300 grand went to buying those players I would go and recruit and buy. And funny enough, one of those 300 grand buys was sold for 3.2 million 24 months later. So that's the payoff. That doesn't always happen. But obviously, the idea of what I do, how I recruit, now obviously me and my partners, how we recruit is, fortune favors the brave. So
Mhm.
we would go out, and what I like about my partners is we had a chat the other day, and they were saying to me, what are the next gems on your recruitment list? And I was talking through them, and like Jason and Randy straight away were like, well, are you getting that player? And I'm like, do you want me to do a deal for that player? And they were like, are you confident this player is going to be worth X amount in 2 years' time?
Mhm.
And I said, yeah. And they went, well, that's what you do. That's what we do. Let's get going.
Yep.
And it's been a privilege to have that support, because I haven't always been, fluid, cash wise, and I put in when I can and whatever else. And they've always stood up for that. And, that's what makes them brilliant partners, and, in tougher times, particularly through COVID. So, and that's what works really well. And, but they also know that, like me with the house a long time ago, they get their money back and they get interest on it if necessary.
Yeah, you've got a proven business model now.
Absolutely. I've got a squad now, and posh fans sometimes laugh when I say 20 million, worth 20. But you look at the players I've sold, I'm always right about my valuations.
Mhm.
I've got a squad now of young players on the edge of being special, that we could be worth anywhere from 20 to 30 plus million pounds in players over the next 2 years. I've got a factory of talent churning through to get
Mhm.
recruited. So we're okay in that way, that if we have to sell a player, I could sell a player. I could right now. Barry's just texted me as another offer from someone else. I could right now take an offer and do that deal. But my partners are the type that go, we want the trees to grow a bit more, instead of chopping them down early.
You have the ability to invest in that and to nurture it.
Right. So they're saying, like, let's maybe wait on that, and in the summer we'll maybe get more, and we do this and we do whatever. So it's really fortunate to be in a position in this pandemic that we still have those assets and those players are still churning over unwanted.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like Dembele as a player, you know, if I told you clubs in Scotland want him, obviously one in the Premier League wants him not till the summer, two in the Championship want him. You know, that's probably the next one that, you know, there's going to be a bit of a, and probably hasn't his best couple of games recently, but statistically, he's the best player in League One. If you pull up all the stats today, he is statistically a phenom in League One for that winger type striker. Could do with some more goals, but people in the Champ and even in the Prem and in the top Scottish Premier League, top clubs there, see the talent and know that bums on seats and what he can do. So that's the next one I'll be churning and going, okay, no, right now if the offer's not good enough, but we know we could sell. So that's just how it works at Posh.
Now, from a cash flow perspective, generally, like when you talked about the non-transfer revenue stream. So when you look at TV deals and season ticket money and the commercial, like, do you have periods of the year where you're cash rich, and then you have periods of the year where you're not really getting much cash in the door? And can that impact,
Yeah,
how a club operates if they don't have the ability to kind of flatten that out?
we're never cash rich. You know, being a League One
Mhm.
club, you're never cash rich. So, but you've got periods where your season ticket revenue comes March, April, May. So you'd have a big tick there. You get your TV money monthly, or you can get it in 4 installments. Sometimes I'll factor that forward as well. Do you know what I mean? Like it's 6 months ahead. And you get your commercial money. It depends on the commercial deal. Is it monthly? Is it paid in installments? You know, like naming rights or you know, jersey rights or whatever else. Your match day revenue you get every match day because you get
Mhm.
people buying tickets. You know, your shop money. The shop probably takes about 600 grand a year, or it did before the pandemic. So you would average that out at 12 grand a week. You know, some weeks you might take 18, some weeks you might take 5. It depends. If we went through a playoff run, you would get 2 TV games, you get a Wembley appearance, you could add another 500-600 grand to your income that's not in your budget. If we had an horrendous time where we weren't up there and people didn't want to come and watch us and we dropped below our projected estimates, that means the cash
Mhm.
flow is going to be down. It's never a nice time for us as a club. Like example at the moment, we had to find 600 grand in December, and we had to find 1.3 million in January, or we have to find
Gee,
600 grand in February. That's not in the
yeah.
club because of this COVID, because of the government, because of the lack of help, because of cash flow, because of wages. No one's taking any pay cuts, because of all that stuff. That's what we have to find. And obviously, that's a pressure on owners and everything else when you're going through this pandemic. And it's not, this isn't woe is me and oh, you know, whatever else. I'm just telling the truth. If our net deficit this year is, say, even after the Ivan sale, 3 million, it's in batches. So December
Mhm.
heavy, January heavy, February heavy, March, April not so heavy, June, July, August horrendous because there's no football and no
Yeah.
income. So it's
Right.
in different periods of the year. Do you know what I mean? So if we sell a player, that changes. You know, and you know, like in August when we sold Ivan, we were probably ripe at the time and doing okay, but we weren't because we were paying PAYE we owed, we were paying wages we deferred, we were paying bills we deferred, we were paying down payments for players we brought in. We were doing all this stuff. We were 6 months behind because of the pandemic, so we weren't really cash rich. But probably for a day in the bank manager was like getting very excited.
Just giving you calls all of a sudden,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
trying to encourage you to
yeah,
do something, this money in the bank.
yeah. Correct. You know, and the irony is that when the bailout money came in, the 375 grand or whatever the magnificent figure was, us and a lot of clubs had. I think we'd not paid PAYE for 1 month only. The day the money was sent in to us, the following day, the PAYE people who
Mhm.
left us alone for 30 days suddenly rang us. And it's just like, you know, your government's done this to us.
Give me a break.
Give me a fucking break. Like, seriously. And, you know, this is the shit you're dealing with, pal. And then, like, we're in our budget. We had in our budget, we had fans back in January. This when we did the budget last year. So we had X amount in January, February, March, April from people paying to come and see us. And that's come out. And now some money's been put in for April and May. And now this new tier shit, that's probably come out. And it's like, yeah, it's just horrendous. You know, and then obviously we gave the option for people for season ticket refunds. That wasn't in our budget. So suddenly you're budgeting 70 grand this month and maybe 70 grand next month. And yeah, I don't know what to say
So you're
to you.
paying all those refunds then in a lump sum if somebody wants to take the refund?
We've given our fans the option of the refund over 3 months to help us with cash flow. And the 3 months in December, January, and February. And we've been really lucky that a large percentage of fans have taken up the donation offer. You
Mhm.
know, the different options where it's not necessarily refunds, but we still do have refunds. and unfortunately refunds have to be paid.
Yeah.
So, and we're handling that and managing that, and our amazing ticket office are handling that, and Chris and Co. But again, like I said to you, it's just this, every time you turn around, it's like another foot on the head. It's just like constant, I said to you last week we had our fans back, now they're gone again. I was really optimistic with a vaccine and everything coming, and I thought Johnson, there's no way he can destroy the economy anymore. So he's gonna, the tier thing will be lifted, and we'll have our 4,000 season ticket holders back. Maybe we'll get another 2,000 in paying on the day. So maybe now we'll have revenue. We'll have the appetite for season tickets in March and April will be through the roof. Next year it'll be full.
People can see a future.
Yeah, and then they've just done this during Christmas, and then I thought, well, the club shop will do really well during Christmas, and again, like now we're shut, and we can do, deliveries. It's fucking. Honestly, God, I sound like a broken record. It's just constant.
So let's go on to the expenditure side then. And this, again, is kind of a typical year, if there is such a thing as a typical. When you look at, a revenue of, let's say, in that £6 to £8 million for a typical League One club who doesn't necessarily have the ability to go and cash in a lot of chips that you do. I guess maybe it's a little moot now because of the salary cap, but pre-salary cap, what would you be looking at from a percentage of that you would budget to go on playing staff?
I think in the past, obviously salaries have risen and risen and risen. If you were to take a percentage figure for us, per se, on turning over 6 to 7, 8 million, our salaries are probably well over 60, 70% of that.
Yeah.
Originally, you had the 60% rule where you can only spend 60% of what you bring in, but then that doesn't include your staff of the club. So our whole salary bill probably hits 65, 70% of our turnover, which is too high. In a perfect world, it'd probably be 40, 60,
okay.
Between 40 to 60%. I can't speak for other clubs. I know other clubs live within their means, fair play. With the new salary cap brought in, yes, you've got it's 2.5 million. But don't forget, outside of the 2.5 million, you can have under 21s that aren't included. So your wage bill will be bigger than 2.5 million.
Yeah.
You then throw in all your staff, who aren't in the salary cap. Our wage bill this year is probably well over 4 million, 4.5, 5 million with national insurance. You start going back to what's owed as well and pay deferrals from the few months the players deferred. So well over 5 million.
Yeah.
You then throw in agents' fees, signing on fees. I didn't speak about the other thing last week we got hit with was our pitch turned into a disaster, and we wanted to find out why. And then we found out underneath there's a massive water leak from the local water authority, and they had to fix a pipe, and now it's flooded all underneath our brand new pitches we put in, which we spent nearly 700 grand on 2 of those pitches. So we're dealing with all of that too. So you start going into other expenses. We have a training ground, and then we have a whole other Excel spreadsheet for training ground expenses. And that training ground, electricity, rates, rent, pitches, everything else, probably well over 350 grand a year just on that. You then go into things like away travel. It's 2.5, 3 grand an away game. So you don't get all 23.
Do you stay over?
Yes. So you probably find 15 of the 23 are staying over. Yeah. So again, there's another, plus you throw in the coach cost. You then start talking about sports science, multivitamins, gym, work, all the stuff. We have also what we call repairs and maintenance. There's a whole other thing in the expense column that if you look at ours, for our shitty old stadium that we pay $500,000 in rent on every year, probably costs us another 300-400 grand in repairs.
Right.
Every year, the local safety authority make us fix things and do things and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You then start going into match day expenses. We probably spend on stewards and safety advisors probably over 280 grand a year for 23 games. You start going into paying for who else? I mean, there's so much stuff in the expense column you wouldn't believe. Millions and millions of pounds. You got academies. You've got normal staff. Oh, our electricity bill is 200 grand a year for our stadium.
Mm-hmm.
Massive. Our rates, we pay on rates, I think another 150 on top of the 500 grand rent.
Yeah. So you're looking at almost $1 million in just having the stadium open.
Yeah, absolutely. On top of your wage bill, on top of all the other bits and pieces. Christ, I could pull up a spreadsheet right now to blow your mind away. Pre-season, if you go away, training camps, buying kit. Even with a kit deal, you still have to buy kit on top of the freebies you get.
Do you buy new kit every game?
No, we have I think we get about 80 grand's worth of free kit every year from who's it at the moment, Puma at the moment or whatever, and then anything over that you pay yourself.
Okay.
So I wouldn't say every game, possibly. We also have a kit man. We have all of that that goes with it. We got a chef at the training ground. The chef's not cheap. You got food for the players. We do charge the players for some of the food. mean, crikey, I mean, you've no idea. If I went through it next time when we do the second segment, I'll pull up some of the stuff and you can ask a few more questions.
Yeah, it's interesting to just paint the picture that, especially now when people will look and say, okay, you got a salary cap. So my salary cap's 2.5 million. Well, the reality is, like you just said, 2.5 million is claimed salary cap.
Correct.
So that's, based on the rules of what you count as being salary cap versus not. And so, you look and say, okay, well, you got 6 million in turnover, 2.5 million, you got all this money that we can now invest back in the club. And, the reality is very different.
Here's the reality, and here's the hard truth. If you want to break even and be self-sufficient, you can. That will put you the bottom of League One, middle of League Two. And you can get lucky and you can have a manager who's got friends in the Premier League and recruit 5 or 6 good loans. You can ping pong and float between and possibly do all right. You're not going to have major assets to sell, but you can definitely run a football club on the income that comes in outside of a pandemic. Yeah. If you got 5 million turnover or 4 million turnover, could you run that club at 4 million with $1 million profit for yourself if you wanted to? Sure. There's a risk in the next 2 years you go non-league.
Yeah.
But there is, and that's where maybe some of the owners have come in and dropped down into non-league and maybe, being accused of not being very good owners, have maybe run a club at a profit and earned some money. Can't say that's ever happened to me. It's not what we've done. Me and my partners, unless we're selling players for mega dough and life-changing money in the championship, bar maybe the odd petrol receipt and a few bits and pieces. Yeah, I mean, trust me, the club's losing money every year, So, like I said, there has to be a plan in place to be fully self-sufficient.
Yeah.
The self-sufficient I've just spoken about is doing it the really cheap way where you're basically draining the club and trying to get paid.
You want to grow into that. You want to invest to grow into it.
Correct. And maybe Crew's a great example to do it the right way, who generate through their academy, who invest in their academy, who probably run a really prudent ship, who probably, I don't know if the owners put money in.
It feels like they're an anomaly though, because they've been forever known of having that and nobody's really replicated it.
Quite potentially, yes, absolutely. You're right. There are other cases out there. Who else? I mean, look, I can show you 5 good clubs run really well. I can show you 5 clubs run fucking terribly. There's a bit of a mix, but the one thing the pandemic will do is everyone has to tighten their belts. The salary cap's going to help bring things in line. The other thing we're all fighting at the moment is we're asking all our suppliers to take cuts. We're trying to cut costs. We're trying to not cut corners. We're trying to, what can we lose? What can we keep? What have we got to do to get through it? Do we lose employees? Do we get people to pay cuts? We don't want to lose employees, you know what I mean? But this government, who's doing it to every other business and industry, are doing it to our industry. So it's making it really, really difficult.
So my last question really, before we wrap up, is around, you mentioned stadium and you talked about $500,000 in stadium rent. Can you talk a little bit about the idea of ownership versus renting? Because I think that for a lot of teams that don't own their stadium, there's this idea that, well, if we owned our stadium, then the world would be great. That there's something that's negative about renting your stadium. And that's certainly how people at City, like we rent our stadium. And it's been a big bugbear of, oh, well, that means we've got to pay all this rent up front. It means the money's not available for budgets. And yes, but maybe it's excuse. I don't know. So I just love your perspective on that.
Yeah, I mean, if we paid 10 grand a year peppercorn rent on our stadium, I'd be delighted not to own it. Yeah. But the reality is I never got that lucky. When I first came in, the guy who had it rented it to Barry Fry for like 70 grand a year. That went up to 250 the minute I came in. Then the council bought it and it nearly doubled. And it's just been such a ball ache. And I guess the logic would be if we buy the stadium, i.e. me, my partners and whatever else buy the stadium and do it, and that's something my partners want to do, instead of wasting dead money every year on just rent, it's an asset of ours. It's something that we can invest in the stadium knowing that we own it. And if we get to move or we have to move and the covenant comes with us, then that's an asset that helps us move. But if Bradford are paying less than 100 grand a year for a rent on a stadium, they don't need to own it. Unless they're going to move into a new purpose-built MK Dons type stadium with a wrap around it, which is going to bring revenue in and money in. And
we're more likely in the realm of what you are.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, that's a ball ache. I know Oxford as well pay a fortune in rent and they don't get the revenue and match day and all of that kind of thing. There are certain deals that are really horrible. And then when I was studying it and realized I'm overpaying in rent to our local authority, and again, please no one print that and get me in a row with the local authority. I'm not trying to dig them out because they bought a stadium and did it also to make sure the club was still a place to play. When I started going around the house and going through the leagues, League Two, League One, the champ, we had one of the worst rental deals for renting a stadium. There's so many clubs who pay less than 100 grand a year, and the local authority makes it really easy for them. And unfortunately, we had to enter into a different agreement. Otherwise, the council couldn't have bought the stadium. So, look, there are advantages to owning and there's disadvantages to owning, and it all depends on what your lease is. And like I said, if you're going down the route of a new stadium with a ramp and it's industrial and you can bring money and revenue in, and there's some houses like Brentford, and you know you become self-sufficient quicker, great. That's a great way then to own. A lot of the time, the club won't own the stadium. It'll be the private owners who own the stadium because they're raising the money. If we're getting a mortgage, we can't do it through the club, so we've got to do it through us. Hence why we own the stadium. So
Yeah.
people don't like that separation. They get anxiety about the separation, but that's why you have a covenant which protects the football club and the stadium. As long as the covenant's there, until possibly if you move the stadium to a new stadium, the covenant will go with it, and the club still stays in the city. So you know we've got all these aspirations of doing it.
But it's an interesting point. So you're saying like a lot of times the club actually on their own financial footing can't get the financing needed to be able to, but to build the stadium, so you need, the only way you can get the financing is doing it. So essentially is putting yourself as owners at risk because it's,
Correct.
you're making personal guarantees.
So right, so if we're buying a stadium, if we're going down the private route of raising finance, we're dealing with private investors. So that's on us, and that's on, obviously we use the stadium like you would as a bank as collateral, but we're also co-signing. They're not interested in the club co-signing because clubs can go into administration, they can fold, they can whatever. Nobody wants to lend football clubs money unless you've got a player that you're factoring money on. So a lot of the time, fans will kick up and go, "Oh, you know, the club's not going to own the stadium." It's not as easy as that. You know what I mean? And whatever. And I don't want to commit millions of my money straight
Mhm.
into a stadium when I can go and borrow the money. Do you know what I mean? So, and the mortgage we can borrow at's a lot less than the rent.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also, we can do a lot more with our stadium when we own it. And if we had to, if we're staying there, if we weren't going to a new stadium, we could refurb, we could do a few little bits
Mhm.
and pieces, but it's ours. So there's all those different advantages, disadvantages. I guess there's no perfect answer to it. It depends on the given situation for that club. And we could probably talk about some examples in the future of certain clubs, maybe even the Bradford one.
Yeah.
But it's been a ball ache, and it's a lot of dead money when you just rent it.
All right. Well, I know that we're running long today because we've got a lot to talk about. So I want us to just start wrapping up. I want to thank everybody for listening over the last few months. You know, we're continuing to keep going with the pod next year. We are going to take a week off for Christmas. Where will we be? January the 6th, Wednesday, January the 6th will be when we're back. I actually just want to mention that we will have details. We've teased this a little bit about the business pod and membership community surrounding it. So definitely watch this space as we get all that up and running. And finally, I just want to extend a thanks as well to Henry Hewitt and to Rob Zappillo, who have actually been joining the team, supporting the
Top fellas.
editing, the production, promotion, doing an awful lot of the work behind the scenes, which is,
They've done great.
yeah.
They've done great. Look, we need you as listeners. If you enjoy listening to the pod, the biggest thing you can do for us is always leave new comments and great comments on the different formats, but also share the pod. Share it on social media. Share it on football forums you might be on. You know, the more people that listen, the better it is for us, because it's not about the money. It's about making sure people are interested in it. And we've done really well, but we'd like to do a lot better. And you know, that's our target next year is to treble, if not quadruple, the subscriber growth rates. You know what I mean? And the business part will be interesting because that will give you a few lessons on life and business and making a few quid, losing a few quid. You know, all the experience we've got in that. So that might be a little bit more down to individuals and the way you live your life, and maybe you want to change the way you live your life. So if you're interested in that, we keep saying, you know, join. We've got a waiting list now. We've got a good number on it. The following email for the business pod is
Just send a note to us at either go to the website, which is hardtruthfootball.com/contact, and there's a contact form that actually comes straight to me, or just contact@hardtruthfootball.com. That email address also comes directly to me.
So to everyone out there who's listened this year and who's enjoyed a happy Christmas, Merry Christmas, stay healthy and stay wealthy and, you know, fat and happy, because that's what we'll be eating indoors over Christmas. And to everyone's worked on the podcast, including yourself, Phil, you've been a breath of fresh air. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And nothing but love for you and the family over Christmas. Have a great time. And yeah, Merry Christmas, everyone.
All right, we'll be back. Have a great Christmas and New Year as much as you can, and see you in January.
Cheerio.